Going live in a few seconds. I think we are live now. Yes. Hello, buenas tardes, buenas noches, buenos días, donde sea que estén, huipalas por el mundo, todo nuestro hermoso público. Estamos aquí hoy día, esta tarde, con un gran líder en Europa, Yanis Varoufakis. Es un honor en realidad tenerlos y doy la introducción para que escuchemos lo que nos viene a hablar sobre el tema de la injerencia europea en Bolivia. Entonces, una gran bienvenida. Vamos a hacer esta entrevista en inglés, pero luego vamos a tener los subtítulos. Hello, everyone. We're going to start this phenomenal interview with Yanis Varoufakis, a great leader in Europe, very well known, and it's really a pleasure and an honor to have him here today. I'm just going to give leave the floor for our comrade Francisco and Yanis to hold this phenomenal interview for us about the interference of Europe in Bolivia. Thank you, Yanis. Welcome to Huipalas Across the World.
It's a great pleasure, comrades.
Hello, everyone out there. I'm Francisco Dominguez. I'm an activist in Huipalas Across the World, an organization that organizes in Europe, the rest of the world, and including Bolivia, all Bolivians who are interested in supporting the process of change that is taking place in Bolivia. Today, we have the extraordinary privilege to have with us Yanis Varoufakis, who was the Minister of Finance of the Syriza government in Greece in 2015. He is, as everybody knows, a leading intellectual and economist in Europe and the world. He is the General Secretary of the MERA 25 Party, European Realistic Disobedience Front, since 2018. He's the author of many highly interesting books, which I recommend everybody to read, such as, for example, Talking to My Daughter about the economy in 2017, The Global Minotaur, 2016, which tells you about the real origin of the current financial crisis, namely the United States. My Battle with Europe's Deep Establishment, which everybody should know about, also in 2017, which was declared by The Guardian one of the best 100 books of the 21st century. So there you have a very demanding and interesting duty for you to read. And in 2019, with international figures such as Bernie Sanders, that everybody knows, and Fernando Haddad, who was the presidential candidate of the Workers' Party in Brazil, Yanis launched the Progressive International. Yanis, thanks very much for being with us. It is a real privilege and fantastic. Can I start the discussion with you regarding the situation in Bolivia? Number one, in order to contextualize, what's your perception of the achievements of the Evo Morales government, so that our audience, know from you what you think about it?
Francisco, thank you for all the kind words. From where I'm standing in Europe, the Bolivian government, the mass government, before 2019, looked like a shining star on a very black sky. It was a popular triumph, not just for Bolivia, but for the world, and especially for Latin America. You had the successful foundation of a plural national state. You had the enshrinement of political and social and economic rights for the first time in law. You had an economic program that lifted so many people out of poverty, and which was hailed across the world as being an egalitarian boost. You had important efforts to extend the struggle of the people of Bolivia to other parts of Latin America, and to show solidarity with people far and wide. As I said, for us here in Europe, in Greece, Bolivia was one of those sources of hope in a more or less hopeless world. It was a monumental success. We have to say that, and we have to repeat it. Now, there were mistakes. We are all humans. We have a tendency to error. But those achievements must never be denigrated and must never be belittled, because those who want to belittle them are those who do not have a humanist agenda in mind.
And obviously, in my view, places such as Europe could look towards these examples in Latin America, as examples that could be learned from, not to imitate or copy, but certainly as an inspiration of what needs to be done regarding, improving the world. As is well known, and I know you know this as well, there was a coup d'etat in November 2019, which has been discussed and has been a little bit controversial. But I'm aware, and we're aware in Wipalas across the world, that the Progressive International and yourself took a very critical position vis-a-vis the de facto Añez government that replaced Evo Morales when the coup d'etat took place. And the main reason for the criticism, not only from yourself and the Progressive International, but from many people around the place, was the question of the violation of human rights and the very sort of nasty nature of what was done. Why did you take that position? And can you give us some more details about that, please?
For the same reason why the New York Times took exception at the attempt of a coup d'etat in Washington, D.C. by the supporters of Donald Trump. Remember when they stormed Congress? Liberals around the world were aghast. My goodness, this is a coup d'etat. Here you have a band of conservative bigots who are disputing an electoral result. That's why they stormed Congress. And if they were allowed to get away with it, they would have seized government and they would have massacred Democrats, small d Democrats, not necessarily members of the Democratic Party of the United States. Well, that's fair and good. And all the liberal press in the West, in the United States, in Canada, in the European Union, utterly condemned the Trumpists that stormed Congress. But when that happened, and happened far more brutally in Bolivia, when a perfectly, as it turned out by independent analysts, a perfectly fair electoral process was condemned by the same regressive forces, very similar to the Trumpists. They claimed that the election was fraudulent, in the same way that Donald Trump claimed that Joe Biden won fraudulently. Right? But the difference was that in Bolivia, there was a successful coup d'etat. Añez took over the government illegitimately, and then they proceeded to massacre peaceful demonstrators in Cochabamba, in La Paz, across the country. So, we internationalists, members of the Progressive International, are doing what the liberals were doing in January against the takeover of Congress by Donald Trump supporters. We supported the democratic process. And thankfully, the people of Bolivia rose up and demanded a new election. They had the new election, and they won. And all strength to you.
It is extraordinary. The very fact that the Bolivian people show the level of discipline rather than going to, a confrontation which could have been terminal, thereby unleashing violence, instability, and so they decided to resist, to organize, and to push really hard for the restoration of democracy, which they managed to get eventually, with 55% of the vote, which is an extraordinary achievement. There is no question about it. Nevertheless, part of the process of the restoration of democracy, clearly, from the point of view of what they see, and also from the point of view of international morality, I imagine, is that justice has to be done. Those who are guilty of having perpetrated crimes against humanity, violation of human rights, such as Señora Añez, as is well known, have been taken to trial. And this is a proper process. The due process is being respected. She's got right to legal defense, to everything. The treatment is entirely different. Nevertheless, in Europe right now, there is an attempt by sections of the extreme right wing in the European Parliament at this stage, by an initiative led by somebody called Herman Tertsch. I think that's the pronunciation. He's a Euro MP who is member of the extreme right-wing Spanish party Vox, which, is not a party that rigs democracy necessarily. And what they're looking for is to get the European Parliament to condemn the Arce government for having brought to trial Senor Áñez and other people who are guilty, or at least suspected of being guilty of atrocities and human rights violations. But they also are intending to actually propose that sanctions are applied to Bolivia. What's your reaction to this? Because all the Bolivians are doing is seeking for justice in order to ensure that the process of restoration of democracy is complete.
Well, you very kindly mentioned the reason why we created the Progressive International, to which you are a great member. We did that in 2018 in Vermont, together with Fernando Haddad, with Bernie Sanders and others, for a very simple reason. And we stated this back then. We said that, look, the bankers are internationalists. They managed to coalesce, to form an alliance, an international alliance, and to show immense solidarity amongst themselves. It doesn't matter where, in Davos, in Switzerland, up on the mountains, where they gather every year to have their annual fair, where they come from America, they come from Japan, from Qatar, from Germany, from Bolivia. They are, they're like brothers and sisters. They are totally united. They show immense solidarity with one another. So do the fascists. And we did mention, I actually personally mentioned Donald Trump, Bolsonaro, Modi in India, and I mentioned also Le Pen in France, Alternative für Deutschland in Germany, Salvini in Italy, and Vox in Spain. So, they're the fascists. Of course they get together. I mean, think back to the 1930s, the great alliance between the Croat Nazis, the Hungarian Nazis, the Romanian Nazis, Franco in Spain, together with, of course, the German Nazis, Mussolini, and so on and so forth, right? And isn't it about time, we said, when we created the Progressive International, that we progressives form an international organization to show solidarity and internationalism? We are the internationalists, after all, the original ones, the ones that want to broach across the globe and to bring progressives together. Now, Francisco, look, there is no such thing as Europe. Don't say Europe is supporting this and Europe is supporting that. There is no such thing as Europe. There are many Europes. There is the Europe of the fascists, like the gentleman that you mentioned, who wants Áñez to be taken off the hook and to be made president again. Of course, that's what fascists want. The fascists want their own kind to prevail all over the world. But then there are other Europes as well. There is us, DiEM25, Mera25. There are the Greens. There are progressives all over the place. There are poor people struggling as we speak to survive in a rich Europe. There are rich people that do not want progressives to be anywhere near the levers of power. So, they've lost in the streets. They've lost at the ballot box in Bolivia. Now the fascists, like the MEP that you mentioned, the member of European Parliament from Vox, they want to try to win back some of the lost ground in Bolivia through using whatever institutions are available to them in Europe, like the European Parliament, the European courts, and so on. But we, the rest of the Europeans, the progressives, who are going to fight them every inch of the way. Vox, Salvini, Le Pen, beware. We progressives of Europe are going to be facing up to you, and we're going to stop you from extending your fascist agenda to Bolivia or anywhere else in the world.
This is very reassuring for the people of Bolivia that somebody yourself represented such an interesting organization, very powerful in the sense of, having influence and being determined to act in order to ensure that justice is done. I want to broaden it out. That's my last question, if I may. The issue, which is, we're worried that after this effort, which is going to take place tomorrow, there will be a continuation of other efforts. And this is likely to be coupled with a huge media onslaught on the government of Bolivia with all sorts of accusations and so on. And this is the norm with all progressive governments in not only Latin America, but in our case, mainly Latin America, which we're concerned about. What would be our reaction to all of this? I mean, you already answered the point, but should we broaden it to include all progressive forces in our defense, not just Bolivia?
Absolutely, because let's face it, this is, don't think that you are that special, right? I mean, when I was in government, I personally faced the character assassination attempt. When my friend Jeremy Corbyn was leader of the Labour Party, he faced an immense onslaught. They even accused him of being anti-Semitic. Whom? Yeah, Jeremy. There can be no one who's more anti-racist than Jeremy. Bernie Sanders was accused of being, I don't know what, misogynistic. Any moment in time a progressive comes anywhere near the levers of power, the international establishment is going to gang up against us. And we have to join forces in order to prevent that. If I'm allowed, if I'm allowed, I'm not sure that I have this right, but since we're talking like comrades that we are, I want to make a small recommendation if I can. If I were the judge, I'm not, but if I were, in the trial of Ms. Agnes, I would sanction her and I would censure her and I would come up with the right verdict, but I would not seek a custodial sentence. I do not, maybe this is the anarchist in me. I don't like prisons. I don't want anyone to be in prison. Not even my political opponents, not even political opponents that have massacred people. It would be a great victory for Bolivian democracy, for Bolivian socialism, for Bolivian progressives. If we treated these people with contempt, we made clear what their crimes were, but not imprison them.
That's very sound advice. And the last point is, if you want to add anything else to what you just said, or leave it like that, because I want to make a sort of invite, but I want you to say something first.
Well, look, keep struggling. We have to keep fighting with a smile, with humor, with the conviction that we are on the right side of history, but without the arrogance that progressives and leftists have had in the past. This is our duty.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks very much for this. I don't have the authority to do this, but I know Bolivians would be delighted if you were to visit Bolivia.
I'd love it
to be there, to see by yourself, so that people can enjoy your conversations, your knowledge about the economy, and all the structures of power that you are so familiar with, in terms of criticizing them. So thank you again very much, Yanis Varoufakis, for your effort to be with us, and long live Bolivia and long live progressive people in the world, including the Progressive International. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Hayaya, Bolivia. Thank you, Yanis. Welcome again to Huipalas. We're going to close now. Hayaya, Bolivia. Vamos a cerrar ahora la entrevista. Muchas gracias a este gran líder que ha venido hoy a hablar con nosotros. Gracias, hermanos.